Hello. Thank you for joining me for Scary Stories in Nevada. You know what they say. There are a lot of bodies buried in the desert. Now, on to the stories. There's a first time for everything. As long as I've been driving this beauty, I had never been lost. There's a first time for everything. I was driving for what seemed like hours. I left the saloon after a few drinks, must have dozed off or something for a few minutes, while driving on an empty road. Dry desert of Nevada heat seemed like nothing while I was in my 1952 Austin A30. Beautiful car, my first. It was 1955. Frank Sinatra's Learnin' the Blues was playing on my radio as I had the windows rolled up and the air conditioning turned on. Then I saw it from the far corner of my eye. A mirage, I thought at first, but no, it was an actual town. Car was almost out of gas and my luck couldn't be better. I could already spot the gas station in the town from what seemed like it was still miles away. I looked around at the desert with a final look, as though I had won. I reached for my thermos of water, and it slipped from my hand and fell on the passenger side. As I reached for it, carelessly taking my eyes off the road, I heard a loud clank as though I hit a fence. I did not hit the brakes but looked shockingly in my rearview mirror. And it was indeed a fence. I must have entered through the wrong side, where it's off limits from the residents to go through. Well, I made it. I'm here in town. I'll be honest, this town looked dead. There was not a soul in sight, which seemed extremely odd. Well, I'm heading for the gas station either way. Car is almost out of gas. I pulled up at the gas station and saw no attendant. I paused. Something was not right. Where is everyone? I looked around at the town again. I saw no one. I saw cars, houses, stores, just no people. I looked up at some of the houses' windows. I saw a couple of heads from a distance staring back at me through two different windows. I waved. They continued staring. As soon as I took another step to see the attendant inside, I heard a faint whistle in the background. The whistle continued non-stop. I turned back around to see and saw nothing but the same quiet, empty town I had laid my eyes upon in the beginning. A paper blew by my feet. It was the last thing I read. Operation Teapot. No, it couldn't have been. I ran as fast as I could to the nearby house, reached for the handle and pushed it open. I ran inside and saw 3 mannequins sitting on the couch, watching a lifeless television set. A chill went up my spine. I ran outside and looked around at the sky, and there it was. Operation Teapot headed this way. A 29-kiloton atomic bomb. I was in Nuketown. Case Report Number 1202. Smoky Mountains National Park Murders. October 26, 2021. Lieutenant Daniel Rodario. In August of 2020, our department received a 1065 for a couple who went missing while hiking in the Smoky Mountains National Park. The case was investigated and several weeks went by without any leads. One of our officers then followed up on a tip that several other campers heard about a social media post that had images of the couple in an undetermined location. The post showed the couple apparently living normally somewhere in the Midwest. So we put out an APB to locate them. As family members of the missing person stated, they did not receive any communications and were still searching for the young couple. We were unsuccessful and the case went cold for a year. 2 months ago, the buried remains of an adult male and adult female were found by hunters in the mountains. Dental records identified the remains to be the missing couple. Autopsies concluded that the victims were fully degloved with a sharp metal object. Forensics found traces of sawdust, and investigations led to a mill 20 miles south of the park. Inside, officers discovered what is believed to be traces of the victim's DNA and possible murder weapons, but no other indications of a perpetrator. At the time, other new anonymous social media posts have been surfacing, showing several more reported missing persons in more indistinct settings. Pictures revealed the deceased couple in several of the scenes as well. This time, somewhere in the desert, along with other reported victims. Photo forensics show that these images were genuine, and we conducted a multi-precinct operation to place these individuals, which led us to the potential match in Nevada. There we matched a location in the photographs, where we found a wooden shack with a book made of old, worn-out human faces lying inside. We soon discovered a cavern in the foothills nearby. Upon our first excursion into the caves, we found a deep natural tunnel leading underground, and in subsequent explorations in the following weeks, we mapped a small section of what we believed to be a honeycomb of passages and caverns too deep for us to effectively explore. However, it wasn't the depth and the breadth of the tunnels, but the unwillingness of the officers and state troopers to go further. Several officers have reported sounds and sensations of being watched while investigating the caves. One officer, John Sewell, has gone missing inside these tunnels and has not yet been discovered. Investigations into these caverns have now been temporarily halted. My preliminary report on this case and our findings have now found to be severely insufficient to explain the events which occurred. It is my belief that there are networks underground that lead all the way into the Smoky Mountains across the United States, and that the victims' skins were worn as a disguise. Who, what, or how many they are, we cannot know. When I first took this job to be an over-the-road trucker, I thought it would be really exciting. I thought I'd get to travel the country and see the sights and come home with stories to tell my friends and family. I was right. This job is exciting, but I soon found that I'm better off not sharing these stories with anyone close to me. Not because I don't trust them, but because I'm worried they won't believe me. Let me back up. My name is Brittany. I'm 22 years old, and I've been driving with a rather large company for a few months now, that I won't name due to obvious reasons. Ever since my training ended and I got my own truck to start solo, I've seen some pretty weird shit. When you're driving the loneliest road in America, yes, that's its real name, in the middle of nowhere, Nevada, things can start to get to you. I suppose it was only a matter of time before I saw something out in the desert at nearly midnight. I still had another hour to the nearest truck stop, and blasting the freezing cold air against my face was all I could do to keep myself from dozing off at the wheel. Irresponsible, I know, but until you work this job, you don't understand how much lax comes with it. I was driving this highway in the desert, in the pitch blackness of a summer night, when suddenly something runs out in the road in front of me. Before I can even react, it's gone across the other side into the bushes. I barely got a good look at it, but I could have sworn it looked like a large white dog, faster than any dog I've ever seen. I tried to just ignore it and keep driving. I see animals crossing the road at night all the time. It didn't seem like anything to get worked up about. Not even a minute later, I feel my truck lurch to the left and into the other lane. I quickly try to swerve and correct it, and easily step on the brake so I don't wreck. It can be easy to jackknife an 80,000-pound metal death machine. I slow it down and regain control. I look for the nearest pullover spot so I can see what the hell just hit my rig and see if there's any damage. Once I find a spot to turn off, hit my brakes and hop out, I walk around to the other side and see a large dent in the side of my trailer. What the hell? I said to myself as I walk over to inspect the side of the trailer. It's a huge dent, at least 5 feet wide and tall. No real shape to it, just a general dent. I can't imagine what could have hit me. My first thought was maybe a boulder rolled down from the side of the hill and smashed into me. But I don't think I was driving next to any hills or mountains. As far as I know, it was flat desert. I hear the sound of dirt crunching under footfall behind me as I turn around. My breath catches in my throat and my stomach drops as I see something standing not 50 feet away from me. It's large, menacing, and white. I can't even find the words to describe what this thing looked like. It looks like a very large dog, and that's a stretch. It stood on 2 short, stout legs with long forearms reaching down past its knees. Its shoulders were broad and heavy, as if it had just ran a marathon. Its head was mostly shaped like a wolf, with a large snout filled with razor-sharp teeth, bared in a snarl, saliva dripping from its maw. Its jet-black eyes bored right through me, filled with hatred and hunger. I couldn't move. I was frozen in place. This creature stood between me and my only salvation, my truck. We stared at one another for a moment, until I broke the silence. "You're one ugly motherfucker," I said. It snarled at me. Then very unexpectedly, it turned and walked away slowly, using all 4 of its limbs, receding into the bushes and into the night. I stood there for what felt like several minutes, wondering if it would jump out and feed on my flesh at any moment. It never came back. I ran around in front of my truck and jumped inside, locking the door quickly and flooring it as fast as you can floor an 18-wheeler, which is not at all. Soon I was back on the highway and barreling down, as if my life depended on it. For a while it felt like it did. Within a half hour, I found myself at the truck stop and shut down for the night. Sleep was difficult that night. I was certain every noise I heard was that damned creature returning. Luckily, the night went on without another incident. I have more stories to tell, but this is getting long, so I think I'll just stop here. Remember, guys, be careful out there on the road. You never know what else is out there with you. So I live in rural Nevada, Yarrington to be exact, and I've grown up here all my life. I live damn near out in the middle of nowhere, with a few roommates. I live a good 15 minutes out of town, and near some onion fields. Me and 2 other of my roommates were hanging out in our backyard, and I thought I kept seeing something. It was dark, around 9:30 p.m., when I saw whatever it was one too many times, and finally called out to it. A guy emerged from the bushes and walked out. Me and my roommates were a bit spooked at this, and he came up and said, stuttering a bit, "Sorry, I was looking for my keys. Me and my buddy were riding out here, and my keys fell out of my pocket." He was a bit older, had a mustache and balding. Me and my roommate said, "Hey, if you need some help, we got a spare light." And he cut me off, saying really fast, "No, I found them. I'll be on my way now." And he walked up the road. Me and my roommates paid no mind to the guy and continued listening to music and talking. Later the next day, we saw an article on the news about a man found dead in the field, and the man who was found guilty was arrested. And sure as hell, the guy we talked to yesterday was the culprit. But it got me thinking, what if I didn't say anything or didn't call him out? It was real creepy, I'll tell you that. My dad had a very strange encounter on a desolate rural highway in mid to late June of 1988, just a year and a half before I was born. He was driving from Nevada to California on Highway 120, a 2-lane mountain road that cuts through Yosemite National Park and crosses mountain passes at altitudes of over 8,000 feet. It was about 3 a.m. at night. There wasn't another car in sight, and the road was surrounded by a dense redwood forest on both sides. My dad abruptly noticed a figure in the distance. It was a woman waving her arms frantically, standing in the middle of the road. Desiring to avoid confrontation with a bum seeking a needless favor or a criminal trying to trick him, he veered left and drove past the woman. However, the moment he drove past her, his conscience caught up with him. He thought about how he would feel if he picked up a newspaper later that week with an article about a woman who went missing near Yosemite. On a second thought, he pulled over to the side of the road, about 500 feet past the woman. Even though he was somewhat far away, he was still able to see the woman somewhat clearly through a combination of the particularly bright moonlight that night and his car's taillights. When he looked back, he saw that the woman was no longer waving and just standing there. He thought this was really strange. If she really needed help, she would have rushed over to the car, right? So my dad waited for about 20 to 30 more seconds, and the woman just continued to stand there. At this point, my dad started to get really creeped out. Did this woman have an accomplice or two hiding in the woods by the road? Was this an ambush? It was at this point my dad hit the gas and got the fuck out of there. I'm still confused about how it happened, how I ended up here. You know what? I'll just start from the beginning. I've lived in the suburbs of Los Angeles my whole life. I went through high school and got accepted into my dream school, UCLA. It was close to home, so Mom wouldn't worry too much. It was early July when I decided to take a weekend for myself. The summer courses were taking a toll on me. I was going to drive to my uncle's property in southern Utah, where I had a lot of memories as a little kid. I really miss that place. I left my mom's house on a Friday around 4. I should have left earlier, but my sleep schedule is so utterly backwards, I couldn't help it that much. I packed my humble little Honda with enough clothes for the trip and then some. Mom was horrified at the idea of me going somewhere alone. I guess I can't say I never saw it coming. I crossed the border into Nevada within a few hours. The ride was quiet. It was nice. Driving along desert freeways has a certain type of uneasy calmness to it that is hard to describe. You're incredibly alone, scarily alone. Not a single person for miles, dead land stretching for as far as the eye can see. But it's almost comforting, the fact that you're sure that nothing will bother you. Nothing can, right? I crossed through Nevada and the Las Vegas area without a hitch, nice and quiet. The sun was beginning to set, and it cast an orange glow over the suburbs I was passing through. A suburb that was utterly silent in comparison to the other areas I had passed through at that point. The timed stoplights laid empty, not another car in sight. Just like the desert, I didn't know if I should find this off-putting or relaxing. My mood stayed in an uncomfortable limbo the entire time I was in the bounds of that suburb. I eventually caught an exit out of that little town, but the uneasy feeling stuck with me. It was pitch black at that point. I was only able to see what my weak headlights could illuminate. The dusty road stretched to the horizon, or it seemed like that at the very least. I couldn't see the horizon anyway. The small glimpse of the sky I could see through the top of my front windshield had more stars in it than I've seen in my entire life before that. I could clearly make out the Milky Way's arm through the sea of glowing white dots in the navy sky. It was mesmerizing, incredible. I wish whoever is listening to this could see it. As I was admiring the sky's beauty, I caught a glimpse of something in my rearview mirror. Headlights. I hadn't seen another car in hours. I jumped, and then within a second, I came to my senses. It surprised me in a way I didn't expect. It was just a person, I told myself. Why was I scared? Even then, I couldn't keep my eyes off of my rearview mirror. Then it happened. They separated. Disappearing from view. One light went one way and the other went another. I thought I was seeing things. There was no way that just happened. And in a moment, they came back together. I was losing my mind. How? I started hyperventilating. It must just be me being tired or seeing things. The second time they separated, I began looking backwards out my window. My fears were realized when I saw a floating light in the distance, deep in the desert. I was almost in a trance of disbelief as I gazed into the dark, following this lone light. In my periphery, I caught a glimpse of the other light, but it was on the road, and I was going towards it. I whipped my head around just in time to jerk the wheel to the left, narrowly avoiding the light, but flipping my car on its side. The scraping of my car door on the street made a horrible screeching noise as metal in the frame of the Honda moaned at me. The car slid to a stop on the sand, and I just held the wheel as tight as I could, terrified. I managed to catch a glimpse of what the light was as I crashed the car. I saw a creature that looked like a giant lizard, almost like a dinosaur, but on 2 legs. The creature's skin was leathery, and a giant ball of light was where its head would be. A gaping jaw laid below the glowing head. I sat there. Matter of fact, I'm still sitting here. It's been a few hours, and I could see the light creeping over the horizon. I have been writing this in my notes app on my phone for the past hour or so. I don't know if I'm going to make it out of this, so I want everyone to know the truth. Don't trust the headlights.